So it's an absolute privilege to be in this room. I'm really working hard to not get emotional, because if I'm going to get emotional, we're going to lose. It's going to be a complete loss. But that's the graph. That's what happened over the last 6 years. And none of us, when we started it, had any idea that this is possible. So that's where we are right now, and this is where the forecast is that we'll be by the end of this year, which in anybody's language is a phenomenal story. And the story happened because of a lot of people in this room. So we're going to just, we're practicing what we preach, and we're just stopping to pause for a few moments to think about this journey. So Abe Tibiani, who's our chairman of our board and also the HR director of Nedbank, has said to us many times, PFP is not a project or an initiative, it is a movement. So for those of you, and many of you must have done this, have watched this TED talk about how do you start a movement. Is anybody in the room who's watched the TED talk? So one person, a few people. So the TED talk talks about how do you start a movement. And they say all movements start, firstly, by a lone nut. And so they have on this video, it's a beautiful story. It's this big, it's a festival in the UK, I think. And everybody's sitting on this big grass area, or a kind of hill, and one person goes to the front of the room and he starts to dance. But it's ridiculous. I mean, the moves he makes and the things he does. But he's having an amazing amount of fun, and he's dancing as a lone nut. And then the guy who tells the story says, all movements then, in order to continue, need a few first followers. So when you watch the movie, you see there's one or two brave people who go and stand at the front and make themselves look like idiots with this. Now we have a lone nut and we have a few followers. And then it takes a while, but after about, I don't know how many minutes, the other people on the grass hillock starts to say, there's some fun happening there. I want to be where they are, because they're having lots of fun. And it doesn't take long, and then it becomes really boring to sit on the side, and everybody's in the front, and everybody's having a good time. And so that's how you start a movement. So therefore, thinking that we are a movement, we have to pause and say, who are those? So I know I was the lone nut, but I mean, we can kind of move on from the lone nut. What we're going to celebrate today is those first few followers, the people who kind of came along on this journey. So my story, the lone nut story, is I'm a homecomer. I brought my two beautiful daughters back, very sad that neither of them could be here today, but in 2004 we took the long road back from the UK. And I brought these. They don't look like that anymore. I wish they would, because, they were still easy to manage there. They're no longer easy to manage. And then many of you, and can I just get an idea, who was part of Ben Zander's trip in 2008? So there are a few hands. See, these are the people, they're all still involved. Look, all they're involved. So in 2008, we invited Ben Zander to come to South Africa, and we did this ridiculous tour over 23 days. We interacted with 13,000 people. But the purpose of the tour was to reignite the conversation of possibility. And in many ways, that's where Partners for Possibility started, was with this conversation around what would that look like? How would it look like if we had to reignite the conversation of possibility? Because we are so stuck in a story of deficiency and what's wrong with the world, and we forget that we live in a country that is alive with possibility. So then in 2009, many of you will remember, 5th of May 2009, we woke up to the Dinner King scenario. So can I just find out who were part of that Dinner King scenario story? There are a few of us in the room. So the Dinner King, I'm seeing John, goodness and John, your name's out of my head now, from Gilmore. Sorry, John, I was sitting there. So John Gilmore was one of the people who was a big proponent of walk together. And I remember that morning looking at walk apart is not an option, our country will burn. Walk behind is not an option, but walk together is the only chance we have to create a future that will work, not for ourselves, for our children. And then I took all my courage and I went to Mampela and I said, why don't we do this thing called Create Our Future? And I found this logo. There was even a logo that we created. But that didn't go anywhere, so we can forget about that idea. But then Melanie asked me to do a common purpose program. And one of the days of our common purpose program was when this man spoke about South Africa at risk. Thinking about that day gets me goosebumps. And I mean, Melanie, you were in that room. And I discovered the reason why I'm on the planet that day. And see, I shouldn't go there. Professor O'Connell said, if we do not do anything, if we stay on the path we're at, this is what's going to happen in our country. And he said that in 2009. And these are the pictures from last year. And it's getting scary because we're not acting quickly enough. But that moment got me into action. And I realized that I would have to find in my mind, I need to figure this out to myself. What will I say when these two girls ask me, Mum, what did you do? You knew the country was going to burn. What did you do? And I just couldn't continue my life life as usual. I had to do something different. So the question was, where do we start? Because I'm not an educator. I have a background in business, leadership and organizational development. My question is, what can we do? Because many people said to me, how dare you come and play here? This is our space. Stay out of it. We education. But then, again, many of you came to Peter Block when he was here in 2009 and 2010. Who were the people who were there? Poor Melanie, you were everywhere. But they were, Andre Pretorius was there, and Veronica was there, and sorry, we are there's a bit of a incestuous community here. Anyway, we came to that, and where's Greg Frotman? Greg, were you Tandi's district official at the time? Tandi Jafta? Ah, okay. But we started, after Peter Block was here, we started this thing called the Network of Community Builders for South Africa. And I want to quickly read you a letter that I wrote to a group of people on the evening of 9th November 2009. And this was as a result of the Skoonstad. So those of you who came to Skoonstad and was there, I'm going to just start by reading it, but I'm hopefully not going to read the whole thing. But it says, this is a celebratory message, a story about community building that will hopefully encourage and inspire you. A few people from the Western Cape Education Department attended the community building workshops in Cape Town in October. Tandi Jafta, Circuit Manager for Circuit 5 Metro South, also attended. She was so inspired by the experience that she decided to use some of the ideas for the upcoming education in Durban. On Saturday, I was privileged enough to facilitate the Circuit 5 education in Durban. Wow, what an experience. Anyway, and it says the theme of the Indaba was a new conversation, and their tagline, our children, our hope, our responsibility. I'm not going to tell you the whole story, but what happened that day was what gave hope rise to PFP is Tandi and her team invited a cross-sector group for every school, 17 schools, and they invited 10 people per school, and there was a teacher and a principal and the janitor and parents and teachers, students. And at the end of the day, one of the participants stood up and he said, we have not-for-profits working with teachers and others working with learners and others working with principals and social services. What we need is a not-for-profit who can help us get closer to each other so that we can work together for our learners. 35 years old, young man who stood up. And I left that session and I phoned Eugene Daniels. And I said, Eugene, this is what we're going to do. We're going to run community building sessions at every school. And he laughed a little and he said, do you know what that means? There are 20,000 schools and you can only do this kind of 10 Saturdays a year. Louise, it will take you a long time to have any impact. So I go, okay, well, what we need to do is we need to make sure that every principal can do this. I don't need to do it. We just need to empower the principals. So I had this idea that says, what if the school could truly become the center of community? When citizens reclaiming responsibility for raising our children. And I found this picture. That was our picture. We said, around every school we need IT practitioners and youth and business and HR and accountants and faith-based communities and parents and citizens, and they need to because the difference between the schools that work and the schools that don't is that the schools that work, we have these active citizens. And then the principal said to me, we have a day job. Go away with your bright ideas. So I thought, well, okay, well, how do I do that then? Because we need to get this done. So I came up with a stupid idea, well, wonderful idea, isn't it? To say, well, what if we get people like all of you to work with principals, and then you can work together, and then you can bring some extra capacity, and then the principals can breathe. So I spoke with Greg Flotman, and Greg Flotman was kind of listening, and then one day he said, okay, well, we'll humor you. Come, meet us. So it was Greg, and it was Andre Pretorius, and I don't know who else was there. Andre was at his field primary. Do you know who else was in the room? A few other principals. But they kind of said to me, Louise, we've heard you. You keep harping on about this. We just want to give you some guidance here around what we need. Firstly, we, the principals, do not want to be fixed. Go away with that fixing idea. We do not need... Secondly, don't adopt us. They said you adopt puppies and babies, you do not adopt school principals. Thirdly, don't dump your old stuff on us and then we have to feel all grateful, because you wouldn't take that stuff to Westerford. Why do you think it's okay to bring it to our school? Because there's peanut butter and jam between the pages when you bring it to our school. It's not a good idea. But then lastly they said, and this is what, and Andre, I think it was Andre who said it, he said, we know we can get something from these business leaders if they can be humble enough to work with us. But more importantly, we want the business leaders to consider the possibility that they can learn something from us too, that it could be a reciprocal partnership. So in April 2010, so then nobody in that room wanted to do this. I said, okay, well, let's have a go. And I remember Andre was kind of tentative and he wasn't sure. But then I think Greg spoke with Rhyn. Rhyn, what happened? Greg spoke with you, and you kind of said, well, come and meet with me. I'm happy to give this a go. And April 2010, that was the day. I walked in and I said to Rhyn, I don't know what we're going to do. Can we figure something out? And so he said yes. And that's become the story of our program. So on our book, Mandy, who wrote the book, said, Partners for Possibility is the story of people who said yes. And we had no idea what we said yes to. We had no idea that it would end up at 600 partnerships around the world. Sorry? We do. We look more tired than we do now, don't we? Anyway, so Rhyn, I'm going to at this point stop and hand over to Davril and Rhyn, but I quickly want to tell, and Denise, but I quickly want to tell the story about Davril. Are you going to tell the story, Davril? I just want to tell that one little story. So this was April 2010, so this was just before the school holidays. And Rhyn takes me for a walk through the school. And these teachers are all distraught because the government has decided that it's going to be a 6 weeks holiday, and that means that these kids are not going to know their literacy and numeracy and their stuff because they're going to write systemic ANA tests just when they come back, and then Canavan is going to get bad results because the ANAs are not going to, all that stuff. So I go to Davril's, and she says to me, this is the problem, these... And I'm completely idiot. I have no idea, man. I'm so naive. I say, Davril, but can't we get the parents to do something? Are the parents completely useless? And she rolls her eyes at me. She says, you don't get it. Parents in this community are not interested. It's those parents in the white communities, they might be interested, but not our parents. And I love her for that, because that was the moment that Partners for Possibility, because I kind of go, I'm going to show you. And guess what? We still like each other-ish sometimes. We've been on a journey, and the school is a school now where parents are actively engaged in their children's lives. So over to the Kaname Primary A team. Unfortunately, Arnola, who's the deputy, cannot be here. But Davril and Denise is this amazing IT teacher. You've never seen a more live wire teacher. Careful, she's going to get you to donate a few chairs, definitely chairs, but more computers. So over to you, Davril.